For 25 years, a small grave in a Michigan cemetery carried only 2 words, Baby Garnet. No birthday, no family name. Just a date, and the unanswered question of who she was. Every January, someone left fresh carnations, but no one ever came forward. The police file gathered dust until a young woman, filming a TikTok DNA test for fun, uncovered a secret buried for decades. What she found would put a name on that stone and change everything. The cemetery on the edge of town was the kind of place you passed without thinking. Tall oaks swayed in the Michigan wind, and weathered gravestones leaned at odd angles, some so old their lettering had faded into nothing. But in a quiet corner, far from the older family plots, there was one small marker that had never stopped drawing flowers. It was simple. A polished granite heart with a single name carved in block letters, Baby Garnet. No date of birth. No family name. Only one date beneath, January 9th, 1997. The people in town knew the story, or at least, they thought they did. A newborn, just days old, found abandoned and lifeless near a patch of frozen scrubland on the outskirts of Garnet Township. The medical examiner never revealed much, only that the child hadn't lived long. The case was treated as a tragedy, but also as a crime. What haunted everyone wasn't just the loss of life. It was that no one ever came forward. No mother claiming she'd made a mistake, no father demanding justice. And so the baby was given the only name anyone could think of, after the town itself, and laid to rest at the town's expense. The people didn't forget. Each January, someone, no one knew exactly who, would leave fresh carnations on the grave. Pink one year, white the next. Sometimes a tiny stuffed bear sat beside them, its fabric matted with frost. But beyond that quiet corner of the cemetery, the world kept turning. The police case file gathered dust. Officers who'd once walked those frozen fields retired, taking their unanswered questions with them. By 2005, the town had nearly stopped talking about it. It was too painful and too hopeless. Still, every so often, when the local newspaper ran a story about unsolved mysteries, Baby Garnet's name would appear. The article always ended the same way. If you have any information, please call the Michigan State Police. And year after year, the phone stayed silent. The nickname, Baby Garnet, became a kind of shorthand for an injustice that couldn't be fixed. At church suppers and high school reunions, older residents would shake their heads. If they haven't found the mother by now, they never will. But time has a way of holding on to secrets, and sometimes it waits for the unlikeliest moment to let them go. In early 22, that moment came in the form of something no one in 1997 could have imagined. A 15-second TikTok video. The girl in the video was young, mid-20s at most. She sat at her kitchen table, sunlight spilling across a small white box with green lettering. An at-home DNA test kit. The video's caption read, "Trying this ancestry thing for fun. Let's see what I'm made of." It was just another entry in a popular trend. Spit in a tube, send it off, and post your results for strangers to guess. But buried inside that test, hidden among the percentages and family origins, was a connection that would shatter the peace of Garnet Township and put a name to the smallest headstone in the cemetery. The baby that no one claimed was about to tell her story. January in Garnet Township had its own kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, watchful quiet that seemed to hang over the frozen ground like a held breath. That silence was what the first officers remembered most from that morning. In 1997, the day a passerby made the call. It came in just before 8 a.m. A local man, on his way to work, had pulled over when he thought he saw something in the snow near the tree line off County Road 4. At first, he thought it might be a bundle of rags, or maybe trash that had blown from a roadside bin. But as he got closer, his footsteps crunching in the frost, the truth began to take shape. and the warmth drained from his face. When the first patrol car arrived, the officer didn't need to ask questions. The bundle was small. Too small. And the stillness of it was absolute. They worked quickly, cordoning off the area, their boots leaving crisp marks in the white crust of ice. Forensics teams came and went. Detectives searched the frozen brush, looking for anything, footprints, tire tracks, clothing. But the cold had been there longer than the crime scene tape. The county coroner took the small body away, in silence. The official report would note that the baby was only days old. No signs of long-term care. No identification. The case became a priority for the Michigan State Police. Detectives knocked on every door in a 10-mile radius. Hospitals and clinics were contacted to see if any births had gone unreported. They searched adoption agencies, interviewed doctors, midwives, even high school nurses. But the trail was ice from the start. No one had seen a pregnant woman vanish. No one had noticed a new mother hiding away. And the tiny clues they did find led nowhere. By spring, the media had given the child her name, Baby Garnet, after the township where she was found. Photo in the paper showed nothing but the patch of snow where she'd lain, the detectives blurred in the background. It was a picture that made people look away quickly, as if meeting it head-on was too much. Months turned into years. The case file grew thick with dead ends and anonymous tips that went nowhere. By 2000, one of the lead detectives admitted quietly to a local reporter, "We may never know who she was. But someone out there does." From time to time, hope would flare up. In 2003, a woman in another state was arrested for abandoning a newborn. And for a moment, police wondered if she could be connected. She wasn't. In 2009, advances in DNA testing led detectives to submit what little evidence they had. But without a matching sample in the system, it was like searching for a shadow. In the dark, through it all, the grave and the cemetery remained the only constant. The carnations kept appearing each January, sometimes with a small note that read simply, "Rest easy, little one." No one knew if the person leaving them was a stranger or someone with the truth in their pocket. Then, in the early 2010s, a whisper of possibility returned. Forensic genealogy, a new investigative tool, was helping solve cases thought impossible. Names were being put to the long forgotten. Killers were being caught decades later. The detectives in Garnet Township didn't know it yet, but their case was waiting for the right person to step into the light, and she would arrive not with a badge, but with a phone, a social media account, and a decision to mail a little tube of saliva to a DNA lab. Just for fun. The video that would change everything didn't even look special. In fact, it was almost lost among hundreds of other lighthearted clips on TikTok that week. Dances, recipe hacks, and the usual "get ready with me" chatter. She called herself Maya Online. 25 years old, living in a small apartment just outside Lansing, Michigan. Her videos were usually about thrift store finds and silly roommate stories. She wasn't chasing fame, just passing time posting for the few 100 followers she had. That morning, she'd been scrolling through the For You page while sipping coffee. One video after another showed people laughing, crying, or looking shocked as they opened the results of their at-home DNA kits. The captions were catchy. "I'm 30% Scottish," or "Turns out my grandma lead." Maya smiled, but she didn't think much of it. Her own family history was, as far as she knew, simple. Her mom's side came from up north, her dad's side from Ohio. No scandals, no mysteries, at least none anyone ever talked about. Still, something about the trend stuck with her. She'd been meaning to take one of those ancestry tests for fun anyway. And that week, she noticed the kits were on sale at the drugstore down the block. By noon, she was sitting at her kitchen table, the little green and white box open in front of her. The instructions were simple: spit into the tube, seal it, drop it in the prepaid mailer. She decided to film the process. Not for anything serious, just a quick 15-second clip to add to the trend. She balanced her phone against a coffee mug, pressed record, and joked to the camera, "If I find out I'm secretly royalty, I'm quitting my job." The clip went up that afternoon with a caption, "Trying this ancestry thing for fun. Let's see what I'm made of. #DNA test #family history." It got a modest amount of attention over the next few days, a few likes, a couple of playful comments from friends. Maya forgot about it almost immediately. Life went on. Then 6 weeks later, her phone buzzed with an email. "Your DNA results are ready." That night, she filmed her reaction video. At first, everything seemed normal. The pie chart showed the expected European mix, a bit of Scandinavian she didn't know about, and some distant cousins scattered across the Midwest. But as she scrolled through the DNA matches section, something made her stop. Near the top of the list was a name she didn't recognize, a match labeled close family, possible first cousin. The app even said they shared a significant percentage of DNA. She frowned. Her mom had no siblings, and her dad's only sister had one child, a cousin she already knew. So who was this? She posted a screenshot to her TikTok story, half joking. "Okay, who's been keeping secrets?" Most comments were playful. "Oh, family drama. Plot twist." But one message, sent privately to her inbox, wasn't a joke at all. It was from the account of a middle-aged woman she'd never met. The message read, "Hi Maya, I think we're related. I also think law enforcement may want to talk to you. It's about something that happened a long time ago." Maya stared at the words, unsure whether to laugh, delete, or panic. Her first thought was that it had to be some scam. But curiosity has a way of quieting common sense. She typed back a cautious reply, "I think you have the wrong person." The answer came quickly, "No, I'm sure. It's about a baby." From 1997. For the rest of the night, Maya kept opening that message, reading it, then locking her phone as if the words might disappear. A baby from 1997. She was only a toddler then. What could she possibly have to do with something that happened before? She could even form memories? By morning, the message still sat there, unanswered beyond her single line. She almost convinced herself to ignore it entirely, but before she could, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a stranger from TikTok. It was an unknown number. From a Michigan State Police area code. She let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, her phone rang again. Same number. Her pulse picked up. On the third ring, she answered. "Hello, is this Maya?" The man's voice was calm, practiced, the kind of voice that didn't rush. "This is Detective Jameson with the Michigan State Police. I understand you recently took a DNA test." Maya sat straighter without realizing it. Yes. But I'd like to speak with you in person if possible. It concerns an ongoing investigation. We believe you may have information, even if you don't realize it." She gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of investigation?" There was a pause, short, but heavy. "Do you know anything about a case from January 1997, a child found in Garnet Township?" Her mind scrambled for the name. Somewhere faintly she remembered reading about it years ago in one of those Unsolved Mysteries articles. Baby Garnet. I've heard of it," she admitted. "But I don't know anything about it." "That's okay, Detective," Jameson said. Sometimes the people who help most never realize they were connected at all. That afternoon, 2 detectives knocked on her apartment door. Jameson, tall and in his early 50s, carried a worn leather folder under one arm. His partner, Detective Ruiz, held nothing but a small evidence envelope. They didn't waste time. At her kitchen table, Jameson laid out a single sheet of paper. A photocopy of a birth announcement clipped from an old local paper. It wasn't fancy, just a name, a date, and a few lines about a healthy baby girl born in December 1996. "Do you recognize this woman's name?" he asked, pointing to the mother listed. Maya shook her head. No, I've never seen it before. Ruiz slid the envelope toward her. We believe you share DNA with her. That's why we're here. Maya's first instinct was to laugh, not out of humor, but out of disbelief. This doesn't make any sense. I only have one set of grandparents. On each side. I know my family. Jameson's voice softened, but his eyes didn't leave hers. Maya, DNA doesn't lie, and in this case, it may finally tell us who Baby Garnet was. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked. A car door slammed. Normal sounds of an ordinary afternoon. But inside that small apartment, the air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. What does this mean for me? She asked quietly. It means, Jameson said, closing the folder, that you may be the key to solving a case that's been cold for 25 years. Detective Jameson didn't leave her with vague promises or long speeches. Instead, he placed a small digital recorder on the table and asked if he could explain everything on the record, not because she was in trouble, but because they needed her memory and cooperation preserved exactly. Maya agreed, still not sure if she was stepping into a bad dream or a chapter of someone else's life. Jameson opened a large manila folder and began sliding photographs across the table. The first few were simple maps. Garnet Township in 1997, with a red dot where the baby had been found. Then came older photographs of houses, some boarded up, others gone entirely. Your DNA match, Jameson explained, led us to a cluster of relatives who lived within 3 miles of that scene in the late 90s. When we built out the tree, one name kept appearing in connection to your mother's side. He tapped a photo. A black and white candid of a woman in her early 20s, wearing a winter coat, standing outside a grocery store. This is Claire Jennings. Does the name mean anything to you? Maya shook her head slowly. No. Should it? Jameson and Ruiz exchanged a look. Claire is your grandmother's younger sister, Ruiz said gently. We believe she gave birth in late December 1996, and that child matches the DNA of Baby Garnet. The words didn't land all at once. They hovered in the air like snowflakes, impossible to catch, impossible to ignore. That's not possible, Maya whispered. My mom never said anything about. She may not have known, Jameson said. Family secrets. They have a way of staying buried until something forces them into the light. Maya stared at the photo again. She couldn't remember ever meeting Claire. Her mom had only mentioned an aunt once or twice, usually, in a way that ended the conversation. No birthdays, no visits, no family stories. The detectives explained that Claire had drifted away from the family around the time Maya's mother married her father. By the early 2000s, she was living out of state, and by 2010, she disappeared from public records entirely. We're not here to accuse you of anything, Ruiz reassured. But your DNA is the first solid lead we've had in decades. It's given us enough to reopen the case officially. Maya pressed her hands together, trying to stop the slight tremor in her fingers. What happens now? Now, Jameson said, we start tracing everyone who could have known Claire back then. Friends, co-workers, neighbors. And we look for her. If we can find her, we can get answers. Before they left, Jameson paused at the door. One more thing. If anyone in your family contacts you unexpectedly, call me first. Why? Maya asked. Because sometimes, he said, when a secret's been buried this long, the people who kept it buried don't want it found. The door closed behind them, but the echo of that warning stayed in the apartment long after their footsteps faded. Maya looked down at the photocopied birth announcement still on her table. For the first time, she noticed the date printed in the corner dot. It was just 19 days before January 9th, 1997. The days after the detective's visit moved strangely for Maya. On the surface, Life went on, work emails, grocery runs, dinners with friends. But under it all, a quiet tension pressed against every thought. Any phone call could be the one. Any knock on the door could be them again. Holding more pieces of a puzzle, she never asked to solve that. It was Detective Jameson who called first. "We've been tracing Claire Jennings' movements in late '96 and early '97, he said. His tone was calm, but there was an undercurrent, the sound of someone who'd finally gotten somewhere after years of chasing nothing. Claire, it turned out, had been living in a rented room above a small grocery store on the south side of Garnet Township. She'd been quiet, kept to herself, worked part-time at a laundromat. But neighbors remembered something. In December '96, she'd started wearing oversized coats, even indoors. And then, just after New Year's, she vanished. Police pulled old employment records, cross-referenced utility bills, even tracked down one of her old landlords. Every scrap of data painted the same picture. She had been in Garnet Township until the week Baby Garnet was found. And then she was gone. One neighbor, an older man named Henry Tate, remembered something else. He told detectives that in the first week of January, Claire had come to his door asking if she could borrow a shovel. It was snowing hard that day. He recalled, and she seemed nervous, eyes darting over her shoulder as if someone might be watching. She never returned the shovel. When Jameson relayed this to Maya, she felt an uneasy chill. "What about my grandmother?" she asked. "Did she know?" "That's what we're trying to find out," Jameson said. "Family members can hold on to secrets for complicated reasons: loyalty, shame, fear. But your DNA connected too. Branches of this tree that no one else was willing to admit belong together." The real breakthrough came when the investigative team requested archived phone records from early 1997. Back then, calls were still logged by paper, and the company stored microfilm copies in a warehouse 2 counties over. After days of scanning reels, they found it. 3 calls from Claire's rooming house to a payphone near the place where Baby Garnet was found. The last one, made at 6:42 a.m. on January 9th, lasted less than a minute. The number on the other end was untraceable, but the timing was enough to tie her to the scene. Meanwhile, genealogy experts kept building the family tree outward. Maya's DNA had already placed her in the center, but now the branches were stretching toward living relatives she'd never met. Cousins in other states, an uncle who hadn't spoken to the family in decades, and finally, a lead in Ohio, a woman in her late 40s, living under a married name, matched the age and partial records of Claire Jennings. The photo on her driver's license, long brown hair, narrow face and tired eyes, was older, heavier, but unmistakably the same woman from the 1996 grocery store photo. When Jameson called Maya again, his voice carried both triumph and caution. "We think we've found her," he said. "But we have to approach this carefully. If she knows why we're coming, she might disappear again." Maya's heart pounded. "What happens if you find her?" "Then," Jameson said, "we'll finally be able to ask the question we've been holding on to for 25 years, and see if she answers." That night, Maya sat alone in her apartment, the birth announcement still on her table. She traced the mother's name with her fingertip, wondering if the woman who'd brought Baby Garnet into the world could bring herself to speak the truth after all this time. Outside, snow had begun to fall, thick and quiet, just like that. Morning in 1997. Somewhere miles away, Claire Jennings was living her life. And she had no idea that tomorrow, detectives would be on her doorstep. It was just after 9 a.m. when the unmarked sedan rolled to a stop outside a modest brick duplex on the edge of Dayton, Ohio. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that made small noises, a barking dog, the crunch of boots on salt, sound sharper than they were. Detective Jameson stepped out first, followed by Ruiz. They'd agreed there would be no warning call, no letter, only a knock on the door and the element of surprise. Too many times when a suspect sensed the past closing in, they'd slipped away before anyone could get answers. When the door opened, the woman standing there was older than the photos, her hair streaked with gray, her frame thinner. But the eyes were exactly the same. Claire Jennings? Jameson asked. She hesitated, glancing at Ruiz before answering. Who's asking? Michigan State Police, Jameson said, his voice calm but deliberate. We'd like to talk to you about something that happened in Garnet Township in January 1997. For a moment, Claire didn't move. Then, without a word, she stepped back and let them in. They sat at a small kitchen table, sunlight spilling through half-closed blinds. Jameson explained the DNA link, the genealogy work, and the witnesses who'd placed her near the scene. He laid out the old birth announcement, the phone records, the timeline, all of it leading to her. Claire's hands stayed folded in front of her, knuckles pale. When Jameson finally asked, "Were you the mother of the child known as Baby Garnet?" Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "Yes," she said softly. The story came in pieces, halting at first. She'd been 24, working 2 jobs, living in a rented room above the grocery store. She hadn't told her family about the pregnancy, not her parents, not even her older sister. When the baby came early, she panicked. She told herself she'd find someone who could take her, but in the bitter cold of that week, she made choices she'd regretted every day since. "I thought, if no one knew, it would be easier," she whispered. But it never got easier. It just got heavier. Jameson asked why she hadn't come forward in all these years. Her answer was quiet, but it landed hard. "I didn't think anyone would care anymore." Ruiz leaned forward. People cared enough to leave flowers on her grave for 25 years. For the first time, Claire's composure broke. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Over the next 2 hours, she gave a formal statement, signing each page. The case that had been a mystery for more than 2 decades finally had a name to attach to the smallest headstone in Garnet Township, in Michigan. Word traveled fast. When the news reached the community, some felt anger that a truth so simple had been hidden for so long. Others felt only relief that the question mark over Baby Garnet had finally been replaced with an answer. 2 weeks later, on a bright but cold February morning, a small group gathered at the cemetery. The old granite heart still stood, but now it bore the baby's real name beneath the nickname the town had given her. Fresh flowers rested against the base, pink carnations this time. Like the ones that had appeared every January. Among the crowd was Maya. She didn't speak to reporters. She just stood by the grave, a quiet presence, knowing that a stranger's DNA test had brought her here, and that the little girl beneath the stone was a part of her family. Even if she never knew her. As the group began to leave, Maya stayed. For a moment longer. She brushed snow from the top of the stone, her fingers lingering on the carved letters. "You're not forgotten," she whispered. And for the first time in 25 years, that felt true.